All right, guys, and welcome to the second episode of Changing Gears. My name is Tunn. This week, we're joined by the same two fellows that managed to make it last week, and somebody who decided just not to bother. Sorry, Toby. You were doing something with your girlfriend or something?
Yes.
I'm not 100% sure, but commitment to the cause clearly not there. But you have managed to make it this week. First and foremost, Toby, did you manage to cast last week's episode? Did you listen in on either Spotify or Apple Music? That we have now, or did you watch on YouTube?
While I'm working, I had my headphones in and I listened to it, and it was good. I thoroughly enjoyed.
Good. Boys, how are we doing after last week's episode? Nobody from TC's come in and tried to fire you or
not just
ban
yet.
you from events? No
time yet, though. I'm sure.
Elliot, have you been banned from any events yet? Hopefully,
built loads of fans. Now have a following who sit outside my house all the time. Been pretty
paparazzi.
Sounds about right.
Trying to get my photos. It's been mental, really.
Yeah.
Chris, really
a crazy week for you.
Chris, before we get going,
go on, mate.
I'm banned from the EGL Twitch channel.
Are you actually?
There's no way.
Genuinely can't type in there. I'm currently banned from that channel.
Happened? What's he using? What's he using him?
What is this?
Illuminati confirmed.
Dedicate my Thursdays and.
Lisa, if you're on the chat, can you find for an unbanning, please? She will be in there. So we'll get that one out of the way. Not that you need to type; you can just say what you want while you're in.
See what's going on, though, can I?
That's a fair
talking
point.
About me.
They are actually. No, but we're going to get into this one. First and foremost, first topic. Of course, we have seen Execution now come into a ranked playlist, so that is now available for everybody to play online. And the question I want to ask everybody is, sort of stemming from the conversation we had last week. Execution, do we see this as a game mode that could be played competitively on Gears of War 5? Toby, since you weren't here last week, you go ahead first.
Yeah, buddy. In its current state, I have to go against the grain of many pros and actually say no, because the stalemates in Ultimate Edition were painful. I casted almost the entirety of UE, and the stalemates on canals with the snipes and gridlock, where some players or teams in particular at events would get the sniper and run all the way back to the Hambus Tower and just camp there every single round. Hashtag get rifted, if anyone remembers that flashback to UE. I believe Execution, though, with an objective, so some kind of variable to stop or prevent stalemates, not the man-up rule that we saw in Gears 3 that people forget about, because that really, really did not work. But an objective that would work, one with third person. Of course, the biggest argument is against a bomb type, for example, like an S&D thing, is third person wouldn't work with that. Or something like capture a point in the middle of the map that comes up in the last minute, or Krill, converges on the map like a battle royale kind of thing. Execution with an objective, yes, I think that would be awesome. Maybe even better than escalation. Without an objective, no, I'd rather escalation.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing with any sort of like TDM or kill-based game, is that without an objective, it can be really, really slow at a high level. Of course, you know who you're going up against. Players will sort of develop strategies in these games where it will slow it down. You've got to give yourself the best chance of winning. You don't want to take too many risks. Is it the same sentiments from everybody else, or has anyone got a disagreement with Toby?
Not a disagreement, but I think something worth thinking about is that the strats that you were mentioning just then about the sitting back with the sniper. The sniper's not so much of a power weapon in this game, and there are a lot of other tools to try and force movement. And I don't think the maps are quite as rigid. So I'd be interested to see it. I think I'd still err on the side of no, don't put it in until we have something to force movement in there with it, like an objective or whatever. But yeah, I think like things like the GL that's in there now, the drop shot, these are all things that we didn't really have in Gears in Ultimate Edition, and they're catalysts to help move players around the map, right? So maybe it does work a little bit better now. We've got other tools to help stop those stalemates.
I'd just be interested to see what it would be like at a competitive level. Really, I feel like if we were to, I feel like if the TC were to kind of throw it in the mix just to test and see, or maybe had some kind of arena to maybe test how it would work in Gears 5 or
this ranked play
competitive in the high competitive scene, then that might be good to see. I agree with certain points what Toby said about how I don't think in its current state maybe it is playable to be there in a competitive level, but I'd still be very interested to see what it'd be like as like a tester. If there was an event they could test it, or an online tournament they could test it and see how it works, would be interesting to see.
And I think that sort of poses my next question, is that do you think that people are only really talking about execution so much because there is so much want for a second game mode or a third game mode, a fourth or fifth game modes? I think, is it more so one of these things that we need to see execution in there because of it being a great game mode, or is it more so just because we want variation?
Well, it stems from the conversation we had last week, isn't it? About like escalation. Is it going to bring the followers in? Is it going to be is it going to be a watchable, going forward in the new season in Gears 5? Is it going to be watchable? Is it going to be popular with viewers on Twitch and the gearsofwar.com website? I personally just don't think so. I feel like there has to be TC have to consider potentially another element, and whether that be execution or whether that be King of the Hill. I just feel like in the future, maybe not now, they need to consider bringing in something else. I don't know what you guys think. You guys probably really in disagreement, but I just would love to see another element to the game.
Go on, Alex.
No. After you.
I mean, my main issue at the moment with Escalation 2.0 in particular, from what I've seen, is that already the game mode seems to be a bit more passively played than, say, Escalation 1.0. A lot of people cite that as perhaps the live system now that we've got in place, the cap on the lives. I'd agree with that, but only to a certain extent. I think the main reason the game has slowed down so much is, number one, of course, the maps are new, so players and teams are maybe not so likely to make risks as to their usual strategies. At least maybe in testing they will, but in terms of like you'll go run, do some crazy stuff, and knowing that it'll pay off through experience, like you don't really see that at the moment. Yes, experimentation, but not really super aggressive off the wall plays. But secondly, the strength of the guns, it means actually making pushes is so much more difficult on this game. You don't spawn with flashbangs or stuns rather. In particular, of course, we had smokes in Gears 4, and so there's perhaps less room to actually make plays and make pushes. And so that really gives teams less wiggle room, less ability to make plays a lot of times against setups. Setups are crucial in Escalation. Go ahead.
I was going to say the flashbang is I think the flashbang is a perfect weapon to break setups. I feel like that's a great.
Yeah, but the issue is not everyone spawns with them. You have to add them. And so you don't have 5 off the bat, do you? And so actually breaking setups in that sense is actually more difficult, looking at utility from the get-go.
And I think
mainly also with strength of the weapons is huge.
Yeah, with the drops, with the placement system as well. You have to waste basically a round to give anyone else that flashbang, and compared to potentially leveling up your respawning drop shot on your home hill, like there's no real competition there. You either give yourself a power weapon that's going to keep respawning for your team, or you give yourself a single flashbang. And maybe that 50-50 fight in the middle goes your way, but so maybe there's some balancing that can be done there. Maybe you get 2 flashbangs or 3 flashbangs, or you get flashbangs on all 3 of your front runners or something if you spend a point there. There's balancing that maybe could be done.
Yeah, I think the thing is that there's a lot of elements that are making the game a lot slower right now. So if it's like, I know we're sort of delving into a bit of a different topic here, more so just add any game mode rather than execution. Do you not think because that slowed down, it would be nice to see something really fast paced like King of the Hill, for example, rather than execution? Or do you think both of them have a place in the current game?
I mean, here's my issue with the idea of adding more modes to the game. I don't feel like it's a valid reason to add modes just for the sake of it. The modes have to be very good, comparable in how much integrity they have for competitive play. As it stands, King of the Hill in this game doesn't have that much integrity. It's not comparable to, as people do refer to, Gears 3 when King of the Hill was in the esports, cycle. Back in Gears 3, we had 3 very good maps with very good spawns that were tested thoroughly beforehand. I haven't seen any or played on, in my experience on rank currently, any King of the Hill maps or maps with King of the Hill that have suitable spawns. Spawns are still, as people say, broken. And it's a huge blow because it can really dictate who wins rounds, not just the whole match in general if it comes down to one situation, but, multiple team fights. King of the Hill in particular as well with Gears 5, everyone spawns with flashbangs typically because breaking setups is so useful, or at least the majority of people spawn with flashbangs. I'm sure if you guys have played much King of the Hill, when you're standing in that hill and flashbangs come at you, you are flashed over and over and over again.
Have you not seen the memes on Twitter? They're actually quite hilarious.
Yeah, funny. Yeah.
They put one on Twitter, and it was like that guy just like a wavy motion of the screen everywhere. It's funny. It's true. Like flashbangs on King of the Hill, and I'm a pro King of the Hill player. You know what I mean?
King of the Hill as well.
Yeah, but I mean. Yeah, no, it's very frustrating. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
King of the Hill in particular as well in this game, it comes back to the strength of the weapons. King of the Hill is all about setups. It's not like with escalation where you can do multiple things and you know, it's not domination escalation. Remember, you don't just sit on 2 hills for the rest of the round and whoever holds the 2 hills the longest wins. There's more to it than that. In King of the Hill, it's 1 hill and your whole team is literally boxed around that hill. I even tell to some of my teammates, which we scrum on PC together. When we play against stacks in King of the Hill, don't try and be smart and special as if we were an escalation scrim against really good players and go around the map, try to be smart with your positioning. No, in King of the Hill, typically the best thing to do is be near the hill and literally turtle up around it. That seems to be the optimal strategy a lot of the time. Unlike with these previous maps in Gears 3, which were great maps, by the way. Dry Dock, you try and control Torp by the whole time because you can see the whole map from there and control the spawns. Trenches, of course, there's lots of high ground to consider. On this game so far, there's nothing like that. Spawns are a little bit messed up.
That goes back to what you were saying about the spawns, right? In that the spawns on 3 were predictable for King of the Hill. Like you knew if you stood in one location, you could force a team to spawn elsewhere, and you could kind of work around the map. Now. Yeah, I mean, there probably is a way to predict it, right? It's just not as visible right now because teams haven't spent that time on it. And perhaps, off the bat, it also feels a little bit more haphazard as to when and where these players are spawning. But I think that is probably something that would be on the Gears 3 side of things, right? Is that spawns were predictable, so you could have larger setups because you could then revolve and rotate around where they were spawning based upon what hill it was. And it kind of forced players to move around the map that way as well.
Yeah, I think, look, we're raising up issues, which is to the point of where maybe they aren't quite ready to jump in. And I think another thing to note as well, especially with like things like King of the Hill, is that, spawns are something that, it's early on yet. This is something that, they need a lot of testing for. So hopefully spawns will go on to get better. I've seen multiple people talk about them this week. And if they were great, then absolutely. But I think that they want to make sure the game modes are polished. I think with escalation, you haven't got so much risk of something like spawns dictating the game. I think it's more down to how it happens. It's not working on something that could be a chance. Like, so with King of the Hill, you're sort of like, well, fuck knows where they're spawning at this point. Like, let's just maybe bank on them spawning here. Like, I think the worst one is Exhibit. It's just, I've literally watched people like be naming and people are spawning where they are, wherever, like down at the bottom of the stairs, etc. So I think it needs to be more polished before that's definitely in. For me, I think it's probably the game mode that I would prefer to see. If it was to just be 2 game modes, I play it. If it's a best out of 5, you play one game mode 3 times, one game mode twice. And I think, just back to your point about the flashes, that they're overpowered, but I suppose that then counteracts the argument of everything's pretty powerful. So we had a big discussion about flashes last week, Toby, where we were sort of haphazard in wanting to actually nerf them personally because of how strong the weapons are. Because then if you nerf them one way and don't make them as powerful, then how much stronger are the weapons going to feel when these setups are here? So there's still so many things to thrash out for King of the Hill that I think it makes it sort of unobtainable to have it in there right now because there's too many queries around it. Whereas execution is more so about the way that people play it, etc. The game mode itself, as a game mode has been like that the same. Maybe it does need something added to it to stop the way it's played being too slow. But then again, you've already got that slow game mode and escalation. Elliot, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say that I think that ultimately the TC have to pull the trigger, don't they? They have to say, let's try this. They have to say, let's try this. And I feel like the only way we're going to know how these game modes are going to work as well as escalation is if they actually try them, which I I'm not too sure. I don't work for TCs. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I doubt is being spoken about at the moment. I think there's all emphasis and investment on escalation, which is is fine, because escalation in itself as a core mode is very competitive in its right way, and it has very, very competitive elements. But until they pull the trigger and actually try and test these other modes in the competitive scene, then they're never going to know. We're never going to know how they're going to work out in this new game. Obviously, we can assume that from the Gears of 1, Gears of 2, Gears of War 2, Gears of War 3 days, that execution is a competitive game type Gears of War UE. But until they try it on these newer games, then we're never going to know, really. And I feel like the best way for them to, if they're going to invest in bringing another mode, then the best way for them to kind of then iron out these problems, like for example, the cost spawn points and the flashes being too overpowered in that game mode, execution being too much of a stalemate, is they have to try it first, don't they, really? And then iron it out from there. But I just don't think they're ever going to do that. So that's my opinion on it, really. It's just TC have to pull the trigger and they have to say, okay, let's try this and see how it works. Maybe in an online tournament, let's see if it works. But
they've got the platform for it now, right? I mean, they've just rolled out the play platform for Gears GG. I'm sure we'll talk more about it later, but that's potentially something that they could, they can trial through that platform, is whether or not they have a single elim tournament for execution, and they just kind of trial these different game modes, just give people a taster and get the feedback. Maybe it's not something for this season, this year of competitive, but it could be something long term in the future.
It's similar to the new maps, right? In Gears 4, when they had that escalation tournament on the new maps, right? When they released the new maps, it's similar to that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Completely new game mode. Maybe it's a little bit different, but it's similar to that. They released the tournament, they introduced the new game map, the new maps. They got the feedback from the pros, and then they went with picking maybe one of those 4 maps and putting them into the pro circuit. So I guess it's similar to that, isn't it? They have to try it. There has to be an interest in trying these new game types. Otherwise, it's just always going to be escalation, and we have to work with what we've got.
And I think, we're going to chat about the Pro League in a second, based on, obviously, so far, it's sort of like a 6-month layout plan. When we're talking like things like Pro League, that sort of thing, these things cannot be changed halfway through. It has to all remain the same throughout each stage of the Pro League, etc. So it either has to happen now or in between seasons, that sort of thing. So if we are going to see a change, it has to come pretty fast at this point, let's be honest. But let's talk about the Pro League then, because that was obviously the big announcement this week, that this has now come out. The whole esports program for the year has now indeed been revealed. I've got the graphic that you lot have been asking for. So basically, this is how it looks. This is off the PGL website, of course. The Gears of War esports website has this one too, but I want to say it's detailed enough for a graphic to show how everything is going to sort of break down and give you guys an idea. First and foremost, though, go with Frew. Impressions on the Pro League, how it's been ran. Are you happy with how the setup looks this year?
I think it's a bit more predictable, which I like. Obviously, we know that at the end of each quarter, you can see them at the top there, fall, winter, spring, and summer. We're going to have a major event. Fall is San Diego, winter is going to be Mexico. I'd imagine one of them is going to be North America, and potentially the other one's going to be Europe. But those kind of defined quarters are really quite useful for the population to try and get everyone to these events, right? For a fact you're going to have an event in December, you're going to have one in May. That's kind of cool. And then the whole structure around qualifying for it, splitting the teams, splitting the pro teams and the AM teams up. I like it. It's gonna hopefully kind of push a little bit more movement in the slower regions. So for Europe as an example, everyone's not just going to get smashed about by EU's finest for a full quarter. They're going to be separated, and we're going to get to see these amateur teams kind of forcing their way up through the ranks and fighting for that qualification spot in the next quarter. It could be pretty interesting.
Could I just say on that as well, and that's something that's maybe from a mentality perspective, if these teams, like you say, because the top 4 teams aren't going to be able to compete at these amateur events, that's going to give a wealth of confidence to some of these kind of up and coming teams that potentially they could kind of transist into those pro tournaments, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And I think
it's great.
I think it's a great idea. My issue with it is Are we going to have enough teams to roll out those fucking amateur?
I think so.
That is
look at the EGL tournament.
So far, yeah.
That's great, and that's fantastic. I love that. You know, we've got nearly 32 teams both weeks, which is fantastic. And I hope we flipping stay with it. Yeah, I was considering getting a team for this tournament to bump up the numbers, and that's
You're busy, pal.
That's never good for anyone. But I mean, you know, if that starts transitioning to those amateur events, then fantastic. Then now as a community, we're starting to build off something and it looks brilliant. Yeah. Then we'll start to get more we'll start to get noticed more. And it'll be brilliant for our community. But you know, it's just, is that going to happen? That's the question. Is that going to happen? Are these people actually going to turn up to these events knowing full well, which obviously the bigger incentive is that the 4 teams that are going to smash everyone aren't going to be there? Are they going to turn up to these events?
And I think that's the point, isn't it? Is that, you know, there is very much a disparity between the top
I hope they do.
And
Chris,
the bottom.
I hope they do, buddy.
Oh no, I think that it does give people more incentive to turn up because you know the prize money is still going to be there as well. And on top of that, you know, you're not going in there and going, you know, you're playing against people who are sort of similar level, and it will make very interesting watching. But at the same time, the only bad thing about that for me is that you don't get to practice against the best. So I think that's sort of the, you know, it plays off on one hand and not so much on the other. But at the same time, it's going to be nice to have all these events for different levels. It's going to make it interesting watches, and it's going to be a good proving grounds for some players to come through on. You know, if they're causing a lot of problems at this sort of level, do teams who are in the Pro League sort of look at this and say, you know, this player's there?
Sorry, because I was going to say, obviously, COD do a very similar thing, right?
COD did a similar thing last year where the Pro League was specific to certain teams, but you couldn't be like relegated, etc. Whereas you can be this time round by the challengers. You can go up against them, and you have to secure your league spot. So last year, Call of Duty had the open brackets, whereas these were just big open events that everybody else could turn up to, but you don't play against the pros. You play for like a second tournament, if you like. So it's relatively similar in a way, and I think it worked to a point. You know, we did see in Call of Duty that people were playing really well in these amateur tournaments, and then they were getting picked up, albeit they were more so known anyway. They just hadn't quite made the cut first time round, but then they were performing well on a lower level, and then people took the risk on them, and they carried that over to that higher Pro League level. So it'll be interesting to see, but there is that proving grounds there. Toby, what do you think of the whole announcement?
I think the announcement's awesome. I've been wanting a Pro League for a long time. Some of my earliest memories of UE was actually watching, you know, Fallout and Blaze for that Pro League casting on ESL, and I thought, this is amazing. This is Gears Esports. I can watch really professional, well done content every week for this Pro League. See how the top teams play, and I really enjoyed it. And ever since, I've wanted to see more of the same. I think the new platform as well is really cool. Of course, it's sad to see game battles go, and of course, I'm not sure how much that will influence things in terms of online outside of the Pro League and the official professional esports scene. Because of course, game battles has been huge for Gears of War, given relative to its size. So that's concerning. But we do have UMG, you know, supporting Gears in a big way. In the background, of course, EGL. Shout out to EGL, always supporting.
It's only a tournament tonight, so
let me finish my sentence, please.
Get him off now, right?
Get him off.
Of course.
UMG, pesky UMG.
All right, let's get this sorted. There we go. 3-man show now. We've changed the graphic. You're out.
Guys. It's been fun.
Put the trim cap cup on there.
So, also the 4-team cutoff as well for the Pro League. I quite like. Yeah, there's concern. You know, if you look in terms of the participation at events, most recent events in terms of the peak that we've had in the last several years, around 20 teams for EU. So it's almost down the top quarter of teams are being cut from there, which is a big, percentage of teams. Yeah. So you do really need Europe to turn up here in Gears 5. So far, the online tournaments with EGL have had really good participation though, so it's looking good. The outlook for that. But yeah, that is a relevant concern. You know, the amateur teams, they can't really play against the top Pro League teams at independent events. You know, that might be, something that doesn't really help persuade teams to actually come for the first time. But of course, as a prize pool, I think that's, and knowing you're not going to get steamrolled is a bit better and outweighs that. So kind of a good idea. I like it. I think the top 4 teams generally have like a really big leg up over the rest of them. I think that's a nice cutoff point if we were just looking at skill tiers, in terms of how it scales. So that's really good. But and also what Alex said, it's really organized. We know what's going to happen. We have online play in the form of Pro League, Challenger League, and we have events as well. So I really like how the 2019 to 2020 season for Gears Esports is looking.
And I just wanted to touch on that. I think the biggest thing for me to take away from was the fact that you can be promoted up into that Pro League. So I think, what you were saying, like you go to these events, you can't play up against the pros. There is going to obviously be the open side of it. Whereas, there's incentive though, because if you are playing well, you're gaining more points. It puts you in a good position in the Challenger League to then be potentially promoted to the Pro League, which is then when you will get your shot. So I think it's probably the best way to do it for me. I think, people will sort of say, oh, well, what's the point in turning up if we can't play against the best? But you are playing for the opportunity to play against the best, if you like.
Knowing the community, I don't think that's an issue, really.
I think they'll prefer it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm going to say I'm with Alex. I think that's going to be completely the other side of the coin. I feel like they're going to see that the top 4 teams aren't there and they're going to want to attend because they think they'll win.
Yeah. And also that
obviously, I guess is obviously, like you say, Chris, it is it does have its negatives and positives, having that as kind of a way the Pro League is going to go. But I feel it's only 4 teams, right? And hopefully, if we are going to have 30 teams in the community, as these numbers are showing in most recent weeks, then that shouldn't make too much of a difference, as we assume that they're probably going to be able to play them online. We know how hard it is to play Americans on an EU connection, so they're still going to be able to play those top 4 teams online. Albeit, obviously, it's a different scenario to LAN. But I feel like on the other side of the coin, they're going to want to attend more.
Do you think there's a potential issue with having the qualification online so soon to when the game's out? I'm just looking at the data and I'm thinking to myself, the Pro League qualification actually begins in 3 days time. This show being on the 19th of September, if anyone's watching a later date, of course. But I think it's quite a quick turn through. We're rolling straight into this. It doesn't really give much opportunity for people to test the game and find out if there is any issues for me, in terms of what with the game modes, with the maps, etc., etc. Whereas you say, well, we shouldn't be playing this map, we're straight into it, and these things will not be changed. It's further back to the conversation we're having about execution. If it's going to be in, it has to happen now, or King of the Hill, it has to happen now. If any changes are going to happen, it has to happen pretty much before this starts, because everything has to be played at the same sort of level. You can't be doing one thing, say you were playing escalation only in the qualification process, but then we get to the Pro League and they change the game modes to 3 different game modes. That's not really fair on the qualification process. It sort of puts a little black mark next to it for me. So it's a really quick turnover. I don't know what you think on that one. Do you prefer it, or would you have preferred to maybe see a little bit more off season, maybe another month or so?
Yeah. Go on, Alex.
No, all right, fine. I'm going first this time. I don't mind it, to be honest with you. I think any team worth its salt is, they've had 2 weeks on the game now. That's enough time to scrim each other, is to learn the maps and to get a general idea of what you do. No team is going to be polished, right? And this probably works in the favor of those kind of new up and coming teams, because not everyone is going to be set. Not everyone is going to be ready for these tournaments to 100% of their capacity. And maybe we'll see a few upsets because of that. I'm gonna, put it out there. I think the top couple of teams will be, the top couple of teams that we saw in Gears 4, because they've had a hell of a lot of time together. But there are challenger teams that are in, these tournaments now that potentially have a shot. And the way it works with the qualification tournament, it's not just the first tournament, right? It's over a series. You gain points for entering these tournaments. So as the tournaments go on, you get more and more into the game, I guess, and the teams are going to get more refined. So by the end of it, we'll probably have a good idea of realistically what the stack ranking is of the teams in Europe, and most likely, I'd imagine the Pro League teams will be the best 4 teams.
Sorry, Toby. You go, mate. You said you wanted to go first.
All right. Thank you.
So polite.
Yeah. I agree with Alex in that. I think 2 weeks is long enough for pros to actually prove that they've been pros for the past 2 weeks and actually put in the time. Everyone's got the same amount of time, so it's an even playing field in that sense. No one has really an advantage over others, apart from
EU's finest.
EU's finest,
Maybe got the game a little bit early.
Yeah, really?
Maybe.
Oh, okay. Well, but I think overall, I think it's not too much of an issue with teams. I think the biggest concern for me is tuning. We know the maps. They said, in more fairness to TC, they said from the get-go, these are the maps that will be played. It's all the maps. There's no debate about it at the moment. There you go. Pros will have to play at least, for now, on all maps. So there can't be really any testing or opinions from players on that. They just have to get on with it if they have any personal concerns with them. The concern for me is literal tuning in terms of weapon balancing. We know how strong the Markser is. Everyone's been complaining about it. If you think it's strong on console, try playing a PC scrim. It's not fun at all. And the fact that you can spawn with a
PC.
the fact you can spawn with a Boltok as well on PC is really bad, actually. Yeah. So I wouldn't advise scrimming on PC anytime soon. Anyway, different topic altogether. PC sports not a thing currently. But yeah, Mark said I think that does need to be toned down. People said, many players, pros and just amateur players and general fans of the series alike, all said in the beta the Markser is too strong. Have a look at it. Node Zero said on a podcast not too long after the beta, yes, we agree the Markser might be a little bit overtuned. We'll sort it, but it's still yet to be addressed. So I'm still unsure as to how long it will take to get the necessary testing done for that in-house for TC to change it on the game universally, and other things like that. Other weapons might be a concern and whatnot as well. So yeah, it's more a logistics issue, I guess. We've got a new platform for playing on, so there shouldn't be many issues on that because TC are running it, at its core. No other teams to deal with necessarily. And so I guess we'll have to wait and see how it actually pans out in terms of organization. Rosters have been flipping back and forth across Twitter in Europe recently. If you guys probably noticed, like Jack Reaction has left his team. There's lots of roster swaps in that top 4, team prediction area. So they're obviously, really fast working, trying to prepare themselves as quickly as possible for this up and coming Pro League qualifier. So there's going to be lots of things up in the air because of the race to that, such as tuning and teams. But, we're going to have to get into it sooner or later. As a spectator and a caster, I'm very happy that we're starting and kicking off Gears Esports in a big way while we still got the Gears 5 hype launch with all the streamers playing it and whatnot.
Okay. Speaking of streamers playing it, you see the Dr. Disrespect
1v4
after the whole carry on. That's one on with him.
With him, mate. He'll show you a couple of things or two, eh?
After all the carry on that we've seen from him in the past few weeks, and then for him to pull out something like that with I think he was playing with Nick and the boys.
Distortion as well. Prospect, CDN, X-Pros.
Exactly. They've been teaching him the way, so thankfully I feel as if Dr. Disrespect's tirade of Gears of War 5 maybe is well and truly over after that one. I don't think you can complain too much, but I think ultimately everyone seems pretty happy with the Pro League announcement. I didn't really see any complaints online. I mean, based on what we've seen, it looks like there's going to be 2 events from December till March. I think it's pretty standard. A lot of people love to see these big live events. There is only going to be those 2 announced so far. Obviously, there is going to be smaller regional events at some point as well. So there's going to be events there as well. Maybe wouldn't have minded one more in there, but of course we're going back to Mexico City in March, not before we do see San Diego in December early on as well. So we're going to get a good taster of how everyone's looking. I mean, the Pro League going to be starting on October the 21st as well. It's all happening pretty quickly. I think, my complaint was more so about the game rather than people being ready for it. So as long as the game's ready, I'm happy. I'm sure everybody else will be happy as well. Anything else on sort of the Pro League, what you think of it? Is anything that we haven't really covered that you guys wanted to touch on?
I think there's some changes to the format that are pretty interesting that we could maybe talk about. So previously at the major events, we saw groups, right? We saw pools, and it was pools of 4 across the board. they've kind of switched this up a little bit now, and they're running a Swiss bracket as the seeding stage.
I like
and
Swiss.
Yeah, it's really cool, and they're doing it in two groups of 8, I think it is. So same amount of teams in those pools, but you're gonna see a lot of teams play each other that wouldn't normally, because you basically ended up in a situation in the previous majors where you kind of knew what matchups you were going to get because the seeds at the end of things didn't change too much.
It dictates it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that kind of dictates the whole flow all the way through the bracket. Whereas this Swiss kind of bracket, it makes a difference, and a lot of other teams can kind of start to work their way, work their way up through the through the bracket. It's going to be interesting, and that. I mean, maybe I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on the Swiss side of things.
I think just maybe to explain Swiss to anybody who doesn't know what it is, it's to the point of where you have to win a certain amount of games to break through. Before you lose a certain amount of games, then you will be out. I think that's how it works, if I remember rightly. So it comes down to the point where you have to win your games as quickly as possible. Like, you have to win the allotted amount of games as quickly as possible before you lose the allotted amount of games.
And you always play someone else with the
who is
kind of level as
winning.
you. So if you've won one, they've won one, you play each other, and the losers kind of play each other. So it kind of balances out. You kind of zigzag through the bracket.
Yeah,
interesting though.
It's a really good format. It's personally my favorite out of them all. There's quite a few. There's the typical, obviously, groups into single elim or double elim, etc. But Swiss, for me, I think is probably the most competitive integrate. That's not the word. It's the one with the most competitive integrity for me. I think, the right teams come out. It doesn't come down to maybe like, you start combining scores on maps or map counts, etc. You don't have to worry about that. It's literally beating who's in front of you. You have to do it a certain amount of times. And it doesn't really come down to the luck of the draw or anything like that. If you go through on Swiss, you deserve to go through. So I think it's probably the best route they could have gone down, and I very much agree with that one. Anything else on Swiss from Toby and L?
I think it'd be exciting. Actually, that's all really.
Yeah, for me, it's all really be interesting to see a new dynamic again. They're introducing another new dynamic. I like how they're. We look at everything up from the ground up. So, changing the fact that we're introducing flashbangs and new weapons to the new maps, to the new types of gameplay, to even the new brackets. So it's great to see TC moving in the right direction and releasing some new elements to the game. It's going to be, like Toby says, I'm really excited to see how it all plays out. How the Pro League plays out, how the Swiss brackets. I love that name, by the way, because I like Swiss chocolate.
Swiss cheese.
Swiss cheese, rather, or chocolate, either one.
Swiss watches.
Swiss watches. Yeah, there's a lot of great Swiss things. So it'd be interesting to see how these new elements play out in the how these new elements play out in the new season, and I think it's going to be really exciting to see.
I think one thing that I know that they are absolutely doing right is bringing the skins in. We've already seen the Esports Supporter DLC has now come out. You can, of course, go and buy that one, and everything goes towards the Gears Esports program. So I think that's something that we don't see done enough. I'm not going to maybe try and hint at anybody else that should be doing that more. But it's one of these things that it's great to see the community supported. I think, some people look at it and be like, well, why should I buy it? But you are ultimately supporting the Gears Esports. So I think it's a massive bonus to have this sort of thing, and it's a massive bonus to see TC doing this sort of thing for us as well. And no complaints on that front. You can see they have went on to very much support Gears 5 Esports this year, and this is a good indication to that they're going to keep doing it. We've seen this last year as well. They kept doing it all the way through last year. The esports packs were there all year long, and I haven't bought them yet, but I'm going to make sure I do because I'm supporting Gears 5 Esports, boys. But it's something that you can keep an eye on. There's going to be plenty more coming out. Although Faz is not somebody I use very often. So
he's my main. He's the UK guy, right? Like, he's the first guy in there with the Cockney accent.
But he's a jerk, Alex. He's a jerk.
Yeah, but so are all we. Like, that's the Gears player embodied, right? who in Gears is not
Speak
a jerk?
for yourself. I'm a delight.
I'm not a jerk.
Look down this chat. Look at you all. Jerks.
This is racism just because I got a Cockney accent.
That wouldn't be racist.
Baz was in the chat.
That's race.
Hey, listen. Toby. I see it.
Listen, the Welsh have feelings as well.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So,
we'll get a Welshman in there one day.
We're going to move on to questions in the chat because I feel like we went through quite a lot of the Pro League stuff now. Just moving over to the chat. If anybody does have any questions, didn't see me type it in there, get them in now. And just to remind you guys, we are going to be going on to some gameplay very, very shortly as well. We will take a quick break in the stream after the questions and then move into gameplay shortly after that. Either way, Terry HB asked, do you think it was a mistake to not make a PC side league similar to how Siege made a console side league? I think it was a good idea to ignore, it wasn't a good idea to ignore any potential PC players at launch when new people are coming in. I'm going to go to Toby first because I know that he loves his PC gameplay. We have to let him. And then you can rebuff. You can fight him. You can fight against him. We fight against him next. Toby, go ahead.
Thank you, Chris.
You go ahead, ask the question.
Biggest argument against having an extra platform of PC for esports, at least officially speaking, would be, I think, prize pool would be taken from the console side and put into, a lot of it would be put into PC. I think 1 million for each isn't too bad, to be honest. Or 1.5 mil for console. Give a quarter to us PC folks. That would be nice.
£2 for PC.
Now, but the biggest concern for me, like as a really overall global universal look at the game, would be you'd probably need 2 different tunings then, because you'd be designing a game as perfect as possible for console as it currently is, but you'd also need to do it for PC as well. And it's clear since Gears UE that the game's designed around a controller and console, not mouse and keyboard and a PC. So that would require 2 different tunings. I'm not sure if that's logistically plausible for TC to actually do.
But what about the absolute cross-player? Go for it, like Fortnite did. You play on what you want.
I was literally about to say Fortnite. Literally, why can't we do?
Oh yeah, that's my biggest. This is my biggest. Yeah, exactly, like Fortnite.
We've got cross-play.
All you need to do.
This is what I'm saying. I hate PC.
This would have been the Gears 5 dream. If everyone agreed, PC players included, that Gears is better played on a controller, or at least the current tuning is better played on a controller, no PC tuning tweaks needed. All we had to do, or all we could do, perhaps, TC listening, is to input device-based crossplay so that only controller players can go as controller, mouse keyboard as mouse keyboard. You put in checks to make sure no one can switch back and forth. And I think the most obvious check would be to have a setting in private matches. Controller only, yes. That means no mouse and keyboard players can actually start playing. It would just disable mouse and keyboard in the game, and you could only play with the controller. Then you have everyone on a controller on PC, the best platform, with 1 input device, and everything is balanced. Simple as that. And then pros can play on PC. They can spend their full-time hours, 8 hours a day, on the more enjoyable platform, smoother gameplay frames, input delay, all the rest of it. That's me done.
PC, some of us.
So there's one argument, right? To be fair, I quite like entertaining the idea of bringing the PC audience in. I think with the release on with the release on Steam, right? There's not a huge amount of players on Steam for Gears 5, but it's definitely, I think, an increase on what we saw for Gears 4 for just the Microsoft Store. So tapping into the audience could be pretty cool. And I know there's some kind of like PC fanatics out there like Toby, and there's a competitive community on PC, right? There is a community there, small, but it's there. The other thing that I like to look at arguing against it is not so much the inputs, because I genuinely couldn't care less if I'm against PC players or not. It's more the fact that with the Xbox One X, we have a very standardized platform to play upon, right? And everyone knows what you're going to be coming up to. When you get to LAN, you're going to be on Xbox One X, right? Everyone has played on it. Everyone can kind of... They get an idea of the hardware before you get there, and everyone's locked to the same kind of...
There's a benchmark for the equipment.
Yeah, there's a benchmark, right? You're on there, you're playing at whatever frame rate, you're playing at whatever hertz on your monitor. Like, there's a very structured reason to have Xbox One X. And it's a very global platform, right? Your Xbox One X in Australia, North America, and Europe are all pretty much the same. They're the same hardware specs, at least, so you get the same performance, you get the same output from it. And for PC, you can crank that thing up to 11.
Let's be real.
It can be beautiful. Don't get me wrong, and it can feel a lot better. Because I agree. Like, if we can play Pro League on the best PCs out there, yes. But logistically, it don't work.
But in terms of actually players expecting what to play on and whatnot, we all know if huge amounts of money is on the line, that pros, professionals, they're paid full time to play, Gears Esports. They will maximize the setup with time, and they will be on the most optimal system possible.
Yeah.
And that usually involves even lowering the resolution down below console standards for more frames. It's not all about maxing it all out 4K, etc., as people would assume.
But there are things like 144 hertz screens, and there are advantages.
Right? That is another investment, and
input
pros
delay changes as well.
And pros would obviously adapt to that. If that's why Fortnite is good, is it really tells console players, hey, we're playing on PC whether you like it or not. Play on PC, and then the input devices mix. I don't think input device mixing would be possible with Gears. It just wouldn't be fair. And Fortnite console has huge amounts of aim assist, way more than Gears. So you can't really match the two devices up to be balanced. But if you had everyone on PC, they could play on console, perhaps if they wanted. You wouldn't be banned because you're on console if you don't have a symbol next. But you're allowed PC. A bigger concern logistically would be cheats and hacking. That becomes more of a concern when you leave console and go on a PC. But of course, that's somewhat addressed with easy anti-cheat now in the game for Gears 5. And hacks are, you can work very much against that in a LAN environment, especially. I think it was just a missed opportunity personally. Obviously, I'm biased as hell. I play on PC, but I think it's a missed opportunity for Gears Esports to really capitalize on this, the experienced crossplay setup we've had since Gears 4 now, and actually switching to PC on Gears Esports, the most optimal system for competitive play, a baseline, and I think it's just a missed opportunity. Yeah,
I think just going back to the original question that Terry asked, I kind of avoided it a little bit. I think that the key word in that is PC side league. And if that's the case, 100% support it. 100%.
Yeah, but there's no drawback apart from the price, right? That's all.
Yeah.
And logistically speaking, to doing tune-ins,
whether or not that side league would be at majors is a different question. There are many things that I'd rather see at major events than a PC side league. 1v1s in there would be an interesting thing. We had the 2v2 thing run through Gears 4. We've been talking about other game modes. That there are a lot of things that we can look at that.
The PC side would definitely be an investment, wouldn't it?
It'd be investment as well.
You'd hope that it would grow to the point where you'd rather see
it'd
that.
It'd be a long time investment as well.
Yeah, it would definitely be a time and financial investment for sure.
So we've sort of answered Terry's question, to be fair. I think that everyone, it wouldn't be a bad thing to have it in there, but whether it's logistically and makes sense money-wise for TC, for Microsoft as well, that's where the question sort of starts and ends, isn't it? I think what you said, Frew, was very, very right, though. Where is the standard of what we're playing on? But what Toby said was right as well. Everyone's has to enable themselves to be in the best spot possible. But yeah, I would have liked to maybe see something maybe a little bit more open, allow crossplay, but have to enable controller, of course. That would have been, I think, the ultimate of what we could expect. But then when people are turning up to LAN events, it's then the logistics for our events team, speaking from experience, obviously setting up some events. I try to help with setup. They'll be in the chat whinging about me in a second. But to the point of where when teams are on different stages, it's having to literally swap out. If you are playing on console, if you are playing on PC, and having to move things and swap things, it's just not ideal unless it literally was right. You're playing with controller at these events on the highest end PC, but then, if you're playing at console and home, you're maybe not as used to it, that sort of thing. Your settings maybe aren't the same as what they would be on Xbox, etc., etc. So there's a lot of different hoops you have to jump through for that to work out. But I think it's a good conversation to have for years to come. I know the conversation's been had in the COD community. Could we see that go over towards that now that crossplay is enabled in Call of Duty as well? It's one of these conversations that will keep on going, and until somebody really sort of just throws it in there and does it, then we don't know how it's going to work. But there is many holes to have to jump through. So I think that's going to wrap it up quite nicely. We've got one announcement from EGL. Don't get yourself too excited for any events or anything quite yet, but we do actually have a 2v2 execution tournament on Monday with a €50 prize pool. We will put the link in the chat. I'll actually do that for you guys now. But yeah, it's just it's something different for you guys to play. It's sort of to thank the community for being so supportive so far on Gears of War 5. There's the link to the tournament there. Of of course, we will be posting that on the social media, etc. too. Who wants the hands on 2v2 execution? That's the question. Should me and Toby go up against you two on controller? Because I'm a PC guy.
What?
Oh,
Console v PC.
that's a great point, Chris. I'm liking this.
Maybe we start off next week.
I'm down if we can stream that.
We could stream it, maybe just from my POV, and maybe I'll have to warm up maybe for about 6 hours before.
Can we get face cam as well? Make sure it is you, yeah? You don't just sub someone in.
Who am I getting?
There's plenty of people at where you
Dr.
live.
Disrespect, he plays on PC.
We've seen what they could do.
Around the corner.
Nick Merckx plays on PC.
Fly him
in, boys.
That EGL budget.
I struggle to get you three on here. Well, how am I supposed to get Dr. Disrespect to turn up at my house? Bloody hell. But yeah, so that's a nice new thing to go out. We will post that on social media very shortly. Thank you to everybody for watching as well. We will actually, let's check where the brackets at. Let's have a look. Let's have a little refresh. We've went through a couple of games. I do know that. Absolutely no surprise that EU's Finest won their first game. They're going up against Vanquish Esports now. A few games are still ticking on through around number one. Not quite as many teams this time round. We got 30, so just a couple short, but still plenty of players and teams in there. We are going to end the stream here though, so thank you very much for watching the show. We will be back very, very shortly, of course, here on Twitch with some gameplay from this Tunn as well, going to be casted by the boys. I'm gonna allow them to do their thing. But thank you very much for watching Changing Gears episode 2. I said this will be going up on YouTube, will be going on Spotify, will be going on Apple Music as well, so you can listen on the podcast, listen on your way to work, etc. if you want to hear our dulcet tones just to brighten up your day before you have to go to the office. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next